your authentic self.
Is a podcast designed to guide you towards a deeper, more rewarding life by nurturing your emotional, mental, physical and spiritual well-being. We're thrilled to take you on this journey. Welcome to today's episode.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Authentic Self podcast. Today we're going to introduce what we mean by the term authentic and authentic you. It's the title of the podcast. It's crucial to the message that we want to put out in the episodes that we're going to create and present to you. So we're going to start off right at the beginning of explaining what authentic means. So we're going to have our own takes on this, I think, Lee. So what does it mean for you, authentic? What do you feel when that word's mentioned?
Well, authentic for me, it means being honest and genuine who I am, but not just what I think and what I believe, but it's what I feel on many different levels.
Yeah.
You know, and be able to voice that. You know, and but I think what can get lost over time is how we lose our authenticity. Is obviously outside influences, be that from childhood experiences, life experiences, media experiences, peer experiences, etc. So for me, authenticity for me is getting it, stripping down actually who I am,
Who you are,
who I am
beneath, all that stuff from younger life,
just from younger life, primarily, because we lose our authentic self from our early stages. Even if I talk about, even from a baby, I think as a baby we are born authentic. I think so. With no experiences yet, so I think we're very connected from birth. Be that, and I think we need to be, because we're not developed cognitively yet, emotionally yet. So we have other stuff like energies and awareness around us, but I think that all gets stripped down by our life experience, be that trauma, difficulties, belief systems, learnt behaviours, and we get lost along the way. And it's about it's about refining yourself and living the life that is really you, not what others expect.
Like almost sifting through all that. What is it that other people have expected, and what do I expect for myself? Almost, who am I without all those expectations? And can I be that person?
That's right, because so many people are living someone else's life. As we've mentioned, you look at even belief systems. Belief systems in even our own. Because they're belief systems that's been given by, our significant caregivers, be that mum, dad, brother, sister, nans, granddads, and we grew up into adulthood thinking this is what we believe and this is how we should live our life. But actually, this is how we've been taught and learned.
Absolutely. Well, for me, authenticity is about genuineness, realness. And I know a lot of people will kind of say, well, of course I'm authentic, of course I'm genuine, of course I'm real, because the implication of not being that is not very nice, is it? People might kind of think, well, I'm not fake, and might even be offended at being considered to be a fake person. But I think to some extent we are all fake people, aren't we? Because we're all able to put on that mask or that persona that kind of portrays the person that we think the world will accept. And so to some extent there is an element of being fake in all of us. So for me, the authentic self is the self that wouldn't be wearing that mask, the self that wouldn't be presenting that persona to the world, but it's the genuine real self beneath that kind of polished exterior that we might put on to show the world, when we get out of bed in the morning.
That's right. And that's when we get into so then about losing our sense of self, our own sense of identity, and our disconnections from that, and kept reconnecting back to ourselves.
But like you said, when we're a baby, I think we are our authentic selves. There's not many 6-month-old babies, is there, who will stop to think about what mum wants or dad wants or the caregiver wants. They will just scream if they're hungry, or scream if they need their nappy changing, or scream if they're tired. They just are absolutely in their authentic selves, absolutely knowing what they need, absolutely going to scream until they get it.
That's
right. Very, very genuine. I mean, it might be a bit annoying, but it is very genuine, isn't it? It's very authentic. And then it's not long into life, is it, before children start to realise that, I can't do that, or I can't be that, because it's not acceptable.
No.
So, this isn't even necessarily talking about, kind of abuse or trauma, is it? But, the little child is going to realise that, mum is more pleased if they play quietly.
Yeah, exactly.
So they start to, realise and learn that, okay, so it's better actually, I'm more approved of if I just play quietly.
Yeah.
So straight away they're starting to lose their authentic self. Maybe they're not authentically a quiet person.
No.
Maybe there's someone who's like really extrovert and likes to, do singing and dancing and performing and stuff. But they're learning it's better to be quiet.
Yeah, and even taking it back from birth and being babies again, like you were saying, I'll take it even down a little bit deeper than that. As I said, we're not developed mentally then. We're aware, because when we say what's our authentic self, well, like I said before, our authentic self is knowing ourselves and allowing ourselves to be who we are, not just mentally, but emotionally, with an open heart, from a soul basis, spiritually, body, etc. As a baby, we didn't have that stripped down.
No.
And we were aware of ourselves emotionally, physically, and we needed to be, because when we needed to be, like you said, when we needed to be fed, changed, etc. But we were aware of our emotional connection then, because we had to feel safe, in what felt safe, in what didn't feel safe. But like you said, and then what happens then is we start disconnecting emotionally then, in a sense of energy and self, is because of all these, belief systems and how we ought to behave, and expectations on us, etc. All get stripped away. So basically getting back to our authentic self is really going back to our primal self, really.
I think it is, that primal self that existed almost like at that moment we were born. I mean, I know we could probably, the theme of another podcast, we could go to kind of, pre-birth trauma, but let's just for simplicity's sake, let's just say that, that moment we're born, we are authentically ourselves. Well, it's probably the most authentic we've ever been in our lives.
That's right. and actually our caregivers, hopefully up to the first 9 months, will be okay with us crying and wanting our nappies changing and being fed, because we're pretty helpless and very vulnerable. But that's another thing that we can talk about. Actually being authentic is being our vulnerable selves. But once we get to the age of 12 and we can start crawling around, or we can start voicing our first words, I think from maybe 12 months onwards, it slowly starts getting stripped away.
Absolutely, because what you say there, I think it's quite important, isn't it? Like in an ideal world, the caregivers would kind of support the authentic self of the child. So like if this this imaginary person I'm seem to be inventing, was an extrovert performer type, and maybe parents would realise that and kind of think, actually, let's develop this, let's nurture this, rather than saying things like, oh, be quiet, or not now, or just play quietly. Maybe the parents wouldn't be saying these things; they'd be nurturing that authentic self of that child.
Because we're all different and we're all going to grow differently. But actually, what we're doing is we're just getting a set of belief systems and learned behaviours that are not ours.
Exactly.
It's just exactly how our caregivers want us to be, not how we want to be.
Exactly. And of course, we, just where anyone watching or listening to this could then start to feel quite guilty that they've, maybe not nurtured their children to be these authentic adult selves. But I think it's important to realise that unless we actually stop to question actually how genuine and authentic am I, without the worry about appearing fake or having to admit to being fake, I think unless we have that kind of honest discussion with ourselves, it's just going to go on and on, isn't it? So, a parent or caregiver might just be repeating beliefs that they got from their parents or caregivers, who are repeating it from their parents and caregivers. So somewhere, hopefully down the line, somebody stops and says, hang on a minute, am I being genuinely, authentically me? Are these beliefs or these teachings that I'm passing on and living by, are they mine? I in my work as a therapist, I'm sure you do, very often part of the work is helping someone to see that what they believe or what they're thinking isn't true. It's not their belief, it's not their actual thought. And actually what they've done is inherited that from somewhere, and they're living as if it's absolutely their truth, and it isn't. In fact, often they will say, I don't even believe that.
No, that's right.
Do you find the same?
I find the same, and but just to step back a bit, I think it's not for people to feel guilty about that.
No.
It's actually be compassionate to themselves and actually their caregivers around that, because it wasn't actually probably their caregivers.
It's not intentional, is it?
It's not intentional. It's there. It just got, as you say, it just got passed down to them. And even put my hand up, and none of us are perfect.
No?
Sure. Well, I try now and again. But,
try to be.
Yeah, try to be. But I think it's right in what you're saying around that. I think that's very, very much important.
Yeah. I just don't want people listening to this feeling guilty about, their parenting style. And, actually, if anyone's listening to this, there's some part of them, isn't there, that's saying, actually, maybe I could be a bit more authentic. So just the very act of listening to this suggests that there's something going on that means that person listening wants to get more in touch with their authentic self. So
and going back to my own parent, but going back to what you were saying as well, I even say that to my own children. It's if I've just explained that to them. Some of your belief systems aren't your own. They could have been mine.
Yeah.
They could have been other family members. They could have been friends. But if you're questioning it at any point, that's fine.
Yeah.
Question it. Look into it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't sit right with you anymore, then you can move away from it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter even if it was one of my belief systems.
Exactly.
You need to be. It needs to feel right for you.
Because some belief systems that we hear, or I always use the phrase like downloaded. So belief systems might get downloaded into us from our environments, and some of it might feel compatible. One I often use as an analogy is the belief that it's really useful to stop, look, and listen before you cross the road. That's a pretty solid belief, isn't it? It's really good to accept and own that one and take that on board. Probably stop you getting run over by a bus.
I think that's the important thing. Going back to what I suggest out to people around me is about if it doesn't feel right, then question into it.
Exactly.
Actually, it might have been something you think, well, actually, no, this feels pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And that's fine too.
Absolutely.
But it's just about having your own inquiry into yourself. What is right for me and what isn't right for me.
And there will be a feeling, won't there? Like, I can't imagine many people have an adverse emotional reaction to stop, look, and listen. But I can imagine people do have an adverse emotional reaction to something like big boys shouldn't cry, or nice girls don't get angry, or something like that. There's probably some reaction to that on an emotional level that suggests that's not actually a belief or a value I want to take on because it doesn't feel quite right.
No, and I think that's what leads us on. What we'll be talking about in a minute is to the disconnection from our authentic selves, which goes a little bit deeper in that as well, doesn't it?
So that kind of brings up, doesn't it? How do we lose then this connection to our authentic selves? And in the years that I've been doing this kind of work, what I've noticed is that we will give up almost anything in order to be accepted. Whether that's by mum or dad or whoever, schools, teachers, friends, we'll give up almost anything in order to be accepted because it's fundamental to our survival, isn't it? We as human beings, we do better in community, or back in the day we would have done better in tribes, we would have survived better. So it's almost like so important for us that we can belong to a tribe or a group, a family, a community. And that historically has been essential for our survival. So it's almost like we're hardwired to have the ability to give up our authentic selves to fit in and to belong. But of course, that helps us to survive as a being. It doesn't really do much though in terms of fulfillment, contentment, peace, ease of living, those kind of things, does it? And
I think it's a very thin line, or very balanced, because I think innately in primary base, we want to connect with other people. We need connection to other people.
We're social creatures.
We're social creatures. So it's a very fine line of wanting to connect and be connecting, but not lose yourself at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we lose our connection to our authentic self pretty early on in life, don't we?
Pretty early, as I said, probably in the first couple of years, I would say.
I think so.
That's the beginning.
Yeah.
Of when all the stipulations, the expectations, the oughts, the shoulds.
Absolutely.
I know you don't say that, you don't act like that. Even to the little things of all homes are going to be different, of how you eat at the dinner table, the knives and forks to
all of it, all the
rules, and how many are there?
There's a lot of rules in childhood, isn't there? About what you should do, shouldn't do, how you should be, how you shouldn't be. And all of those rules, which again might be well intended, we're not necessarily talking here about horrendous abuse, are we? Those rules that are intended to be useful actually end up kind of being the opposite, don't they? As that person grows up and becomes an adult who's lost sense of their authentic self. Yeah,
and I know we're going to go on in a minute to speak about connection and disconnection, and I think that's an important thing to say, because some things we talk about is about saying how can we lose our connection, and it could be some childhood trauma and childhood difficulty, but that could be subtle.
Very subtle.
That could just be from just a belief system, and or just not being played with. It might not have been something so significant, but
well, I've got an example. So I remember I must have been 5 years old, and I remember my mother was crying, and in that moment of her crying, I felt like I needed to take care of her. And that then actually became the pattern for many years, where I actually became my mother's carer. I became like the parent. So I was effectively a parentified child. I was the parent of my mother and siblings, because she wasn't really in a position to be able to do that through her own kind of mental health struggles, I think. But what was interesting was, in that moment as a 5-year-old, I almost like had to disconnect from my authentic child self, who was a 5-year-old who wanted to just play and probably have no responsibilities. That was kind of put to one side in order to take on the responsibility of being a carer of mum, which then, as I got older, what it manifested into was, I take care of women. So an inauthentic self emerged, really, where almost like my primary reason for being was to take care of women.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that,
no.
But that's kind of like everything in my life was geared up to do that. You see what I mean? So that wasn't authentic. Not have a problem taking care of women, but that was all I was doing. Everything else, all my needs were long gone. What I authentically needed and wanted was not even in awareness. Never mind, just not met. Just to offer that as an example to kind of say.
That's a good example. So we're going to get on to how do we lose connection. You give us a great example there. What about open that? How would you say that, just generically? Anything more is saying, how do we lose connection? Or examples?
Generally,
or examples.
Well, you think generally, like, being emotional is kind of in society's view isn't necessarily a good thing, is it? So, if you're a child and you're crying, it's like, okay, stop crying, come on, be brave, put yourself together. And back in the 70s when I was growing up, it was like, I'll give you something to cry for in a minute, So basically the message is, it's not okay to be emotional.
No.
Unless it's happy, that's okay. But anything else is not okay. And so what we have to do is disconnect from our emotions. Don't we? Because what we're learning is, it's not okay to be emotional. So I can't be emotional. So what I have to do is disconnect from my emotional self in order to be, an inauthentic version of myself, someone who doesn't feel bad emotions.
No.
Right. Or if I do, I'm not going to admit to it or show it. So I'm starting to create a disconnect, aren't I, just from my emotional self.
And I said that could be many different examples that you show in there, and that could be anything from more stuff of more physical abuse, or anything even more from that, like the things that you're saying. But don't be a sissy. You don't be silly. To calming it down. So it doesn't matter what it is, but then you just learn. Then actually, it's not good to show this or be with this.
Absolutely.
To disconnect from it.
Shut it down.
And shut it down. But going on to that. But then some people, as we know, then if that's all the time, let's talk about more abuse, more traumatic events. Let's just take physical abuse for the minute. But then, if you're continuously feeling that pain, you need to be able to do something, because if no one's helping you to do that, you need to adapt to your environment, then, don't you? So then it's like, I just can't feel because it's too painful. If no one's helping you emotionally regulate that, and
not in that kind of environment,
not emotionally regulate, or even on a cognitive level, actually to explain to you, well, this isn't okay, this isn't right. So actually, you need to adapt. Then, don't you? And you need to survive whatever environment you're in. So that's when you start disconnecting and adapting that. And lots of people do that in different ways. Some people become more outwardly aggressive and fight. Some people come a bit more withdrawn into themselves. Some people run away. Some people like fire. Some people get into video games and just escape. And but that's when it becomes more of a difficulty in adulthood, isn't it? Because if you've learned that not to feel, just to escape from any form of vulnerability, but your authentic self, that can lead to bigger problems in adulthood.
Well, it can, because disconnecting from any part of ourselves, we're talking right now about emotions, so disconnecting from our emotions is not authentic. Because we are emotional creatures, so we are designed to feel emotion that needs to be expressed. So if we're going to stop ourselves doing that by almost disconnecting from our emotional self, it's not authentic, because we're denying ourselves as a human being. And of course, because it's not authentic or genuine or the natural way for our system to be, we're going to need some help to help us to disconnect. That's like you're saying, like video games or drink or drugs or sex or addictions or whatever. We're going to need something that helps us to stay disconnected from our emotion, aren't we?
That's right.
Because our natural way is to be emotional. So our system is going to be, naturally trying to take us back to feeling something.
And or the other way, it's all we want to do is escape.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
That's what all those things are, isn't
that's
it?
That's the disconnect. I just need to escape from the pain and the vulnerability that I'm going through. It doesn't matter if it's on a more of an abusive level or on a more of a subtle level.
Yeah.
If it's just continuous, we need to escape from it. Like we said, we were video games to running away to fighting, or as we got, like I've worked in and around alcohol and drugs, but when we were that young, we couldn't get into it about 10 years old. So video games was our way out, or running away was our way out, or we didn't have a drug dealer at 9, etc. But getting into the drink and drug, that's why when I like to work with people in the drink and drugs, it's like I don't look at the addiction, I look at the pain.
Absolutely, me too.
And also I've worked in and around domestic violence and domestic abuse with the perpetrators as well. If you look at rage or drug use, they're both a form of excuse to getting away from your emotional vulnerability.
It might be a bit controversial to kind of go into this, but when you say about working with perpetrators of domestic violence, I can imagine some people watching or listening to this kind of thinking, well, they're just bad, they're just evil, you shouldn't even be working with them, they deserve what they get, that kind of thing. But actually, I think, like you, I wouldn't look at the behaviour, I'd be looking at the person. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I don't think it would be true to say that a perpetrator of any kind of abuse, I don't think it's that's their authentic self.
No.
It's not, is it?
Well, it's not their authentic self, because we'll get into that in a minute, but when people say, well, how do you work with perpetrators or anyone that's been domestically violent? I'm not saying that behaviour is okay, because it's not okay, but that's what I want them to support them with. It's not okay, and to become their more authentic self, because it's all trauma informed. If you look at people that it is trauma informed, their own childhood experience that hasn't been great, but that doesn't mean then it's okay now, but it's about how do we support you now? Yeah,
exactly.
To get back.
Because I would imagine that the people you work with in this, I guess it's generally male perpetrators of domestic violence. There is women as well, but your work is with men, isn't it?
Generally.
So I guess, I'm assuming, but maybe you can correct me, but I guess most of those guys you work with, their authentic self would probably be a much gentler, kind of more compassionate version of themselves.
Yeah, we're going back to the escapism, and they're not being their authentic selves, because when you work and you open things up, actually we work with the emotional resilience, which they didn't get support with, So actually, when you're in this scenario, actually when you break it down, actually, what was you feeling? Actually, I was feeling rejected. I was feeling abandoned. I was feeling sad. But we talk about the adapter when they were younger, because they do. That's how they would have been feeling when they were younger. They would have felt powerless, rejected, or whatever their triggers were. So what they've learned to do is come away from that and go to mind. But then they're winding themselves up. So they're not being an authentic self, because that's what we talk about. Because actually, when you show that anger and that rage, that's what you're showing people. And people just think that you're an angry, rageful person. But that's not who you truly are. Who you truly are was what's going on underneath.
Absolutely,
what you were trying to get away from, which was the vulnerability, and that's your authentic self.
Absolutely,
that pain.
So our I can't speak. Our authentic selves, I think it is true to say, is probably quite vulnerable, because if we're going to be authentically us, it runs the risk, doesn't it, that we may not be accepted. We may be unloved, we might be rejected.
Or we're seen in a different way, or we're betraying ourselves in a certain way, which we're told that's not a good way to be betrayed.
Exactly, because right back when we were children, if we didn't fit into the norms or the rules that we were growing up in, there was that danger that we wouldn't be liked or accepted or whatever, and that is dangerous to our survival, because back in the day we needed our tribe. So there's a risk, isn't there, if we're going to go on this journey to become more and more our authentic selves, there's this well, I don't think it is a risk, but the fear is that we will be rejected or not liked or not loved or whatever. So it's quite a risky thing for some people, isn't it, to embark on this journey.
And I think it's important to say, because we're talking about the emotional disconnection, which is there, but as I know you're very well aware, there's many different parts to us. If we just break it down to on a human form, we've got a mind, heart, soul, body, emotion, and that's what we can get disconnected from these experiences. We talked about the emotional, but it could even be on a soul level. I know there's people had their purpose and meaning and they were going to get their fulfillment was a certain way of being and what they wanted to do. But actually, their parents said, no, when you grow up, you will be a lawyer, you will be a doctor, you'll be this. But there was something screaming inside them, I don't want to be a lawyer, I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be this. But that's what they do.
Absolutely, yeah.
But actually, what they wanted to be was an actor, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they lost disconnection from their true selves, because in their soul and what their purpose and meaning was. So they lost themselves in their direction and who they really wanted to be. So it's not just the emotional; it can be all these. And going back to the emotional stuff is then if we're going through some of those traumas, and we'd go back to the people that are more aggressive or rageful, that's disconnected emotionally, which actually then they get disconnected from their heart as well, because they shut their heart down, because that's where you start feeling some pain. But it's about reconnected and to be more compassionate to yourself.
Exactly. But being open-hearted puts us in a vulnerable position, doesn't it? Because you might get hurt.
But then you've got to be vulnerable. So it does take time, and it does take work to be more authentic again. But it's breaking these layers down and getting some more understanding and awareness, and then practicing some tools and techniques alongside this stuff.
One of which might be, to go back to what you said a couple of minutes ago about soul, and there's probably a whole other podcast in what soul is and how to incorporate all that. I'm sure we can do that, but just to think that, I think part of us being authentic is to have a connection to a part of us that we could call soul. And I think our soul kind of knows who we are, what we are, how we want to be, how we want to live, what we want to do. Going back to that example of the child who's quite extrovert and a bit of a performer, that's probably almost like soul-led, I think soul-led stuff is that stuff that's unique about us, those things that we love, that we're passionate about. I think often that's fueled by our soul. So, again, if this little child we're talking about, if they're not allowed to be this extrovert performer self, almost like they're having to disconnect from their soul as well as their emotion, aren't they?
Definitely.
And of course that, as we know, later in life does cause problems, because they've lost that inner sat nav that kind of tells them whether this is okay for them, not okay, whether they want to do it, don't want to do it. They just kind of like sometimes have to just kind of go ahead with doing things they don't want to do because they haven't got that inner knowing, have they? That kind of gut knowing, rather than just a mind knowing.
And I'd imagine if, and this has happened to myself in the past, of things that I was doing in my past, and which led me to what I'm doing here actually. And I'm sure, other people can relate to it, is actually if you get a sense of, I just feel a bit lost. I just haven't really got any direction. Maybe you just lost disconnection so because you're not actually doing what you really want to be doing. You're not feeling fulfilled because you're not actually on the path that you want to be on.
Absolutely. So are we saying then that, I think we are, that to be authentic and to live an authentic life, we have to kind of have a connection to our mind, our body, our soul, our emotion, and you'd include heart in that, wouldn't you?
Heart,
And we have to have a connection to that and get to know those different parts of us, don't we? And sometimes it will mean that we might be sad, mightn't it, if we're going to connect to our emotions. Sometimes we might be angry, sometimes we might be upset. But that's all part of being authentic, isn't it?
It is authentic because, and I don't know what just came at me, and it's because, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be disappointed, because I think there's a generation now of that saying, "No, I'll fake it before you make it. Just be positive, be positive." No, then there's toxic positivity.
Yeah, I think there is.
It's okay not to be okay sometimes.
Absolutely,
and actually, we can't be okay all the time. And
Absolutely.
just to give us that breather, and that's when the heart, and just a bit of compassion to yourself, because the thing is, if we can't be with our own emotions in difficulty, we can't be with anybody else's.
No, exactly.
And if we can't be compassionate to ourselves, we don't know how to be compassionate to others. So actually, we need to do this stuff internally.
Absolutely. It sounds lovely, doesn't it, when we talk about having awareness of our mind, body, soul, emotion, heart, and connected in all of those different areas. It sounds lovely, doesn't it? So it's always Zen and Buddhist and all very relaxed and wonderful. But of course, it won't be that all the time, will it?
No.
Because to live authentically means that I'll allow myself to be sad if I'm sad, or angry if I'm angry, or I'll be happy if I'm feeling happy. It will mean that I'm aware of what I need in those different parts of me, and perhaps I'm more able to go and get those needs met.
I think you've used the word there. It's awareness. Because even for myself, I support and help, and I need to work on this stuff for myself. Well, it's a daily practice the rest of my life. But it's the awareness, because it takes some time for me sometimes. My heart's not open all the time.
No.
I know I need to do work for myself to keep my heart open. But the thing is the most important thing is awareness.
Yeah.
Because if I'm aware that my heart's shut down and I'm not in a good space, then I need to do something around it. Yeah. That's my responsibility. Yeah. It's my responsibility. Absolutely. So maybe I need to take a time out. Maybe I need to do some grounding.
Yeah.
Or something. So it's the awareness which is the important thing.
Well, it comes up to my mantra, doesn't it? Awareness equals choice equals change. If we're
right.
aware of something, we've got a choice, haven't we? Like, if I'm aware that I'm feeling sad, I have a choice. I could allow myself to cry right now. I might not. I could, what will I do? And I might choose to do something different. So maybe I'm aware I feel sad, I'm going to cry, and maybe that's the change. I've allowed myself to actually cry because I feel sad. But that's healthy, that's authentic.
Yeah. But the awareness is good, because I said when we go back to working with some people, we're giving them new tools and techniques. If you're aware you're in difficulty, as soon as you got that awareness, like you're saying, you got that choice.
Yeah.
Now that's why I say it's a daily practice. Now, if you've got new tools and techniques to support yourself in that moment, you've got a choice in that moment. Right, I can use these new tools and techniques. Because if you don't use those new tools and techniques, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're just going to
default
to the behaviour you did before. But as soon as you got that awareness, you've got that choice, and the choice of bringing a different behaviour and a different way of life.
Yeah.
And going back to the heart stuff for me, because I know we just talked about it a little bit, even for me, when I know that my heart's closed, that's, I think I told you before, when my heart's closed, I keep my mouth closed.
Yes, I love that mantra.
Because if my heart's closed, I know I'm not in an open-hearted space. I'm not even being compassionate myself in that space. So, I'm more likely to say things that I'm going to regret.
So when you say like your heart might be open or closed, do you mean like in a kind of open, loving way? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I would say so. And that's just not for that's for me at first. Because if my heart's shut down, I need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Because if I can't take care of myself in this struggle, in this difficulty, I'm definitely not going to be able to support others around me.
No, absolutely
not.
So
yeah, so it's just being aware. So when you say it's about if my heart's open, I'm more likely to be more supportive to myself and everybody else around me. If my heart's shut down, and I know that because obviously I'm probably not. The thoughts are probably not the greatest, and I'm probably feeling a bit frustrated. Body's a bit tense, but that's where the awareness then kicks into the body.
So you're
and etc. And then just inquire, what's going on? Yeah, well, maybe I'm just a bit disappointed, or whatever it is at the time, and just bring myself back to me, my authentic self. Because if I don't, I won't be my authentic self.
No, absolutely. And that's been authentic, isn't it? To even kind of be able to own that sometimes your heart isn't as open as other times. Yeah. But we are human beings, aren't we? And the world does present to us stuff that might lead us to be less open-hearted. I was just thinking, if I'm driving down the road and somebody pulls out in front of me, I've got to slam my brakes on, my heart is probably not going to be as open in that moment as it might be another moment. I might even find myself swearing or something. So things are going to happen. So this isn't about pretending to be like all loving and open and sweet, and that's not genuine, is it?
No.
Being authentic is recognizing there will be times when the heart might be closed, when there might be times when I might feel angry if someone's pulled out in front of me. That's genuine.
And I think it's okay. We can't walk around with an open, and like you use the word zen, we can't walk around with an open heart all the time, because we'd be very naive and people would just walk all over us.
Well, that's true, yeah.
So there's another part. It's just coming back to that awareness, I think, of, as you said, because we can't be open-hearted all the time.
No.
No. And just like we can't be there for everybody all the time. And people can't be there for us all the time.
No.
Because at times life is difficult and life is a struggle.
So we can't be open-hearted all the time, and to do so probably, it's impossible, I think, being human. But it would also be inauthentic, wouldn't it? Because it's not actually possible to be open-hearted all the time. To pretend to be so would be inauthentic. Yeah. Because it's not possible.
Yeah. And I think that's when I get back to about, just think happy, just think happy, toxic positive all the time. Yeah. That's not genuine.
No,
it's not being authentic.
No.
We can't be happy all the time.
No. I think positive psychology does have a place, doesn't it? Some self-help books and stuff are really useful. But I think it has to be kind of seen in a bigger context of, okay, but that has to fit into a world where I'm committed to authentic living and being an authentic person. Otherwise I'll just be forcing myself to be positive all the time, which isn't possible either, because we're human beings and we don't only feel positive things, do we?
No, of course not. But that's just getting down and just getting more and having a different. I know we've talked a lot about the emotional side of things, but I think it's just having a different it's starting to learn to have a different relationship with our emotions. That's what it is. And all emotions will come and go for the rest of our lives. So just having a different relationship with not, because sometimes when I'm speaking to some people, they'll say, that emotion's bad, or they'll have a connotation of that's bad or it's not good. Well, if you think it's bad or it's not good, why would you want to go anywhere near it? But actually it's natural. That's what I like to look at.
Absolutely.
If we're talking about the emotional side of things, actually all emotions are natural. I don't even like to look
authentic,
at
real.
I know some psychologists that talk about their negative and positive emotion, which I completely understand. But actually, to reconnect back, I don't even like to look at them as negative and positive. I just like to look at them, they're all natural.
It winds me right up when I hear people say negative emotions. All emotions are just emotions.
And they're going to come.
They're not positive or negative, they just are.
They're just there. And that's about having a different relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way that I support myself and others now is actually seem as they're just a guide. They're a guide there to help you. Like we talk about, we go back to Neanderthal times, and if you think that, they had to fight a saber-toothed tiger or a woolly mammoth coming around, or, you talk about, the fight or flight. Actually, they would have felt fearful in that time. Because that fear let them know, do I need to run away here? Or do I need to stay and protect myself as I'm going to die? So you needed fear. Just like if you talk about in today's society or, any society, the end of a relationship, or a death. They're both similar, they're end of something. But they're both going to bring loneliness, sadness, disappointment, a whole array of emotions. But once again, it's having that different relationship, just letting yourself listen. So it's a guide. It's just letting you know then, hold on, I need to grieve right now.
Exactly.
Because if I grieve, it's going to support me to heal.
And that's authentic, and that, I think, will not only make our life easier, but it will also give permission to other people. Like I was in the pub yesterday afternoon, and somebody came in who'd had a bereavement, I think that day as it happened, and they were clearly upset about this and had been to visit the partner of the person who died, and they said, I couldn't be upset in front of them, and it wasn't the place to address it really, I suppose, but I was thinking, well, why couldn't they have shared how they felt in front of the person who'd lost their partner? And thinking, like, if they had been able to do that, might it have given permission to the grieving partner to also be able to grieve? But there's this kind of, it goes back to the rules that we were talking about, doesn't it? It's like, it's not okay to be upset, can't show emotion, can't cry, got to be strong. It's all these rules that just stop us living an authentic life, and then stops other people doing the same. How beautiful might it have been if they could have just sat and cried together for half an hour? United in their grief.
Well, that's probably something else we can explore. On
grieving. Another podcast.
Or the connection, because actually, when you actually just discuss with someone, actually your vulnerability, emotional you're feeling, with an open heart, that brings so much connection and bonding and a depth with each other. This is a beautiful thing. But holding back that, and then we just don't talk, we just don't communicate, and it's you lose something in that moment.
Absolutely.
To be your authentic, vulnerable self in that moment, sharing that with another human being is a beautiful thing.
It is
a very deep connection. And it's something sad to actually lose, actually.
I think so. So, I think something beautiful, something potentially beautiful was lost yesterday in that interaction between these two people, because they could have shared something really special. Again, connection to other human beings is authentic, isn't it? We are, like I said, social creatures. We need that connection to people.
And I think that's where primarily and innately, that's what we are. We're just innately, compassionate human beings that want to connect with others and support others. But we've been stripped down, and stopping us being our authentic self, who we generally are.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to that original one at the beginning when I said it's a privilege to become who you truly are. It's
hard work too, but it is definitely a privilege.
It does. Well, that's one thing. That's why I say as well, and it's my mantra myself, this is a daily practice. Because if you've disconnected, and there's been behaviours that are not serving you anymore, it is a daily practice for the rest of your life. These new tools and techniques and awareness that you need to do. Because if you stop being aware and you stop using these tools and techniques, you're just going to go back to your default. of protection and
Absolutely.
loss of authenticity again.
I think that's what I mean by when I say it's hard work, to have the awareness, to develop the awareness, to know what's going on, and then the willingness to overcome the fears that will say don't do it, because the fear of rejection, so the fear of overcoming those fears, to then risk being vulnerable. I mean, that takes a lot, doesn't it, to go down that path?
It does take a lot. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And it needs responsibility, and it needs an intention and a commitment.
It does.
But it would be so much more fulfilling for yourself and the others around you.
And I think that's where therapy can be really useful, isn't it? Because, the world doesn't necessarily always provide that kind of environment where people can do that, discover who they really genuinely are and then risk being that person in relationship with another. The world doesn't always offer that, does it?
No.
Perhaps in the workplace it might not be the best place to do it, or in the queue at the bus stop it's not going to be the right place. But with a therapist, there's that opportunity, isn't there, to have someone who's really there to support our self-awareness, to develop that, and for us to then have a chance to kind of risk being authentic with another human being who isn't going to end the relationship or kick us out or anything. The therapist is a safe person to almost play around with it a bit, isn't it? Right, play with being genuine and see what it's like. So I get quite excited by that, because I just think that relationship with the therapist is unlike any other that the person's likely to have in the world. But it's a safe environment, isn't it, where risks can be taken without repercussions that impact on the rest of their lives.
Like you say, in that safe environment. Because actually, when they got that safe environment, and they're starting to open up or get some understanding, where it starts to open up and say things they never said before. Actually, this was okay, because one of the things is it, and actually, because what they've learned to do is, I don't want to be uncomfortable, and that's why they're trying to move away from that. But actually, it's learning. So when I've worked with people in the past, etc., actually, so how does that feel? Is it uncomfortable? Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, but is it bearable?
Yes. Yeah,
it's bearable. So it's bearable. So you can be with it. So they're starting to actually, I can't actually be it. It's uncomfortable, but it's bearable. Yeah, and even that's it, quite an eye opener. Actually, it is bearable.
When teaching counsellors, as I have for a very long time, there's often this fear when counsellors are in training of upsetting someone or the client crying for a long time. And I often do little surveys in the training group and say, okay, so what's the longest time that you personally have cried for? And it usually is about 20 minutes. I remember one extreme was about 2 hours, but generally it's about 20 minutes. So, if we think about that, it's okay, it's not going to be pleasant, but it's 20 minutes. And the benefits of that 20 minutes of crying, the discharge, the relief that comes afterwards, it's healthy and it's genuine, isn't it? It's authentic.
Well, that's interesting, because sometimes you say, "Oh no, I don't cry." Well, have you ever cried? Yeah, that cry. And how did you feel after you cried? Well, I felt better.
Yeah, it's always a relief, isn't it? So I was thinking about what you said about it being bearable. Okay, it's not going to be a pleasant 20 minutes, not the best of your life, but it will be bearable, and you'll feel better afterwards.
And this is why I was saying having a different relationship with this stuff, because it's a guide. Yeah. Actually, your emotion, your body was letting you know you needed to grieve, or you needed to release. Yeah, absolutely. To have some healing. Yeah. Because, as I said, look, everyone's a guide. If we weren't meant to feel emotions, they wouldn't be there. No, exactly. They're there for a reason. Yeah. And they're there to support. That's another way to think, that all our emotions are there to support and guide us. Yeah. Just like if we weren't meant to cry, we wouldn't have tear ducts and we wouldn't cry. No, exactly. It's there for a reason. Yeah. We're built to be vulnerable.
We're sentient beings as human beings. We feel things. Yeah. And it's natural to express that. Try not laughing for 20 minutes if you're finding something really funny. Yeah, it's going to be painful to not let the laugh out. It's the same with tears, isn't it? It's painful to not let it out.
And there's no way going on that way. It's the same. So we're talking about the emotion again. It's all natural. Yeah. So have you ever felt happy and joy before? Yeah. Did it last forever? No. Have you ever felt sad and in pain or rejection? Or yes. Did that pass? Yeah. Just remember it. Yeah. They're all natural, and they will all come and go for the rest of your life. So remember, whatever moment you're in, it's okay. Yeah. Because it will pass. Exactly. It's going to come back again, but always it will pass again. It's just natural. Yeah.
Who's that famous person who said, "This too shall pass"? It's a famous quote. I can't think of who it was now. It's nice though.
Yeah. But it's true. Yeah. It's true. It will pass. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's happiness and joy, or if there's a bit of rejection and sadness. Yeah. It will pass. All of it will pass. Yeah. Because that's when people can get caught up into the to the thought process, because that's where one of their defaults have been, because they go to mind. So through when they feel vulnerable, emotionally, etc. what people have learned is don't want to feel that bump, go to my mind. Why do we go to our mind? Because you don't feel vulnerable in your mind.
No.
And the problem is you can distort things and think things negatively, which is just going to in turn make it worse. You know, so they say, hold on a minute, just leave that. This is fine. Yeah. It's okay. It will pass.
And it's authentic.
Yeah.
Isn't it? To feel whatever it is we're feeling, it's authentic. It's important we do that.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon then? Do you think we've kind of summed up, explained what we mean by authentic self and authentic living?
I think so. I think we could carry on speaking for
forever.
Longer, and I'm sure that there might be another time that it comes up again and entwined with other things that we're talking about, because I think so. Authenticity is at the heart of everything, really.
And I suppose, you know, in the podcast that we're going to go on to create, that's going to be the underlying theme, isn't it? It's about all the different topics that we cover. It's about how can they help everybody to become more authentically themselves, more connected to who they truly are, to live that more authentic life.
Yeah, because we've always mentioned there's many different parts of us. We've talked about the mind, the heart, the soul, the body, the emotion. There's more parts to us now, but we'll be keeping that. I think the podcast, we're going to branch out and talk about all these things, you know, because that's and other things. But I think so. We'll come back and we'll discuss it all again, I'm
Absolutely, sure. So if anyone is listening to this and finding it useful, we could kind of almost like be their regular check-in to authentic living, couldn't we? You know, listen to us rabbiting on for a bit and you know, give some ideas and inspiration about how they could be more authentic.
And as I said, we've touched on a little bit about ourselves now, and I'm sure as we go along there'll be more stuff about our own life, past experiences and difficulties, and maybe how that shaped us and how we overcome that and stuff, which be relatable as well.
Yeah, I'm well up for that, because that kind of is almost like me practicing what I preach, you know, like we've been talking about being vulnerable and it will pass, and of course there's some nervousness for me in sharing, you know, personal stuff publicly, but actually, you know, what's going to happen? Somebody might judge me or whatever. It's okay, isn't it? I'll survive that. It's all right. I've survived worse.
Yeah, and if it comes up in the moment, that's fine. Yeah. And we're trying to talk about authenticity and well-being and growing. And if we're not going to be authentic, etc., there's no point us doing this.
Not really, no. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to us today. If anything you have heard has resonated with you, you would like to explore more, or have found difficult, you can get in touch with us. Our details are in the show notes below, along with some other useful links.